I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans are continuing to disparage and threaten General Mark Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the former top military official in the United States. They are calling General Milley too woke, and they are spreading deranged conspiracies about him and accusing him of treason. Donald Trump recently posted a message threatening General Milley with execution. I'll read that in just a moment, but I want to show you what Donald Trump's former Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, had to say on this topic. Mark Esper was fired by Donald Trump via tweet in early November. He was later replaced by became acting Secretary of Defense, Christopher Miller. Here is a Republican, Donald Trump's former Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, saying that the things that Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans are accusing General Milley of are just completely and utterly false. Play this clip.
And so on. And look, I think much of this is due to incomplete and inaccurate reporting by a few authors, most of whom I have respect for, but who are, I think, trying to depict a hero fighting against a lone president. But the story is much more complicated. I mean, the accusation that Milley called the Chinese on his own is simply wrong. I had reached out to my Chinese counterpart in mid-October of 2020 to send the message, because of what we were hearing through intelligence channels, through open sources and whatnot, that the Chinese were scared, alarmed, uncertain about what was happening in Washington. So I wanted to send a message to them that everything was okay. We had no intentions about them. We want to keep the lines of communication open, so forth and so on, because I wanted to avoid any type of accidental conflict or confrontation with the Chinese. So about a week later, after my call through a subordinate was initiated, I was in a meeting with Mark Milley and Admiral Davidson and others, and I had conveyed to them that we had sent this message to the Chinese. And as typically happens, is we have others in the chain of command do the same. Milley, Davidson, and I spoke about this. I directed Milley to reach out to his counterpart as well and convey the same message, which he did a few days later with the help of some of civilian appointees who work for me. And by the end of October, he conveyed the message. And the good news is the Chinese came back and said, "Thank you very much. We've been very concerned. We appreciate what's going on." Because look, at the end of the day, nobody wants some type of accidental conflict to happen with the Chinese or with any country for that matter. So I thought it was always good diplomacy and responsible statecraft for the DOD to be doing this.
And the Joint Chiefs Chairman, I mean, they just take orders from either the Defense Secretary, the role that you were in, or the President, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is an advisor to myself, to the President, to the National Security Council. He has no formal command authority over anybody. He's an advisor. He is a coordinator. He can be a communicator. And so what he was acting on was my directive to reach out to his Chinese counterpart, which is something we did typically. We would do it with regard to the Russians in Syria. We would do it with other militaries around the world to make sure we were passing along a unified, coherent message up and down the chain of command about our intentions.
Okay, and I wasn't showing you there a Secretary of Defense in a Democratic administration. I wasn't showing you there a Democratic senator. What we continue to show you are the red flags, putting it mildly, from people who worked for Donald Trump, saying, here is how dangerous he is. Here is what he's going to do. And you will recall when it came to Mark Esper that on November 9th, 2020, days after his election loss, Donald Trump tweeted that Esper was terminated and had been replaced by Christopher Miller, who was the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, who would serve as acting Secretary of Defense. Esper had written his resignation letter 4 days earlier, and one of the things that Esper had said is that Donald Trump's effort to overturn the election was a national embarrassment that undermined our democracy, our credibility, and our leadership on the world stage. Again, that was the Secretary of Defense who Donald Trump appointed, who worked for Donald Trump, and then who Donald Trump fired because Esper supported a free and fair election. So on the topic of Donald Trump continuing to lie and Donald Trump using his Secretary of Defense to try to push these lies. I want to remind you as well of Christopher Miller, who Donald Trump had replace Mark Esper. One of the things that Donald Trump says all the time, and you probably hear him say it, is that he demanded that there be 10,000 National Guard troops there on January 6th, and it was Nancy Pelosi's fault, right? That's Donald Trump's line, the complete gaslighting. Okay, well, let's see what happened. You just heard his previous Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, on CNN. This is when his acting defense secretary, who replaced Esper, this is Christopher Miller's sworn testimony to the January 6th committee. I want to show you how it disputes Miller's claim that he was making on Fox News and that Donald Trump makes, that Donald Trump ordered these National Guard troops 10,000 or 20,000 when that's not what took place. Play this clip.
We have confirmed that there was a meeting that took place in the Oval Office just days before January 6th, where the president requested up to 20,000 National Guard troops be made available for security at the Capitol on January 6th, as the law requires.
Hannity claimed Chris Miller was at that meeting. Here is his testimony.
I want to be clear here that since then, in February of 2021, Mark Meadows said on Fox News that, quote, even in January, that was a given. As many as 10,000 National Guard troops were told to be on the ready by the Secretary of Defense. Is there any accuracy to that statement?
I'm not from my perspective. I was never given any direction or order or knew of any plans of that nature. So I was surprised by seeing that publicly, but I don't know the context or even where it was. So, no, there was no. We obviously had plans for activating more folks, but that was not anything more than contingency planning. There was no official message traffic or anything of that nature. Regarding.
So just so we're clear, you did not have 10,000 troops, quote, to be on the ready for January 6th, prior to January 6th.
A non-military person probably could have some sort of weird interpretation, but no, to answer your question, no, that was not part of my plan or the Department of Defense's plan.
And just that the rest of his statement was, quote, that was a direct order from President Trump, and yet here is what we see, all kinds of blame going around, but not a whole lot of accountability. And to be crystal clear, there was no direct order from President Trump to put 10,000 troops to be on the ready for January 6th, correct?
No. That's correct. There was no order from the president.
And then as you dig deeper into what the testimony was by people very close to Donald Trump, you go through the January 6th report and its citations to deposition transcripts in the matter and documents that were being produced. I've always wondered, and you may wonder, where does this 10,000 troops number even come from that Donald Trump has in his mind? Well, what it actually comes from is that Donald Trump was telling his personal aides that he wanted to have 10,000 troops escort him to the Capitol when he completed the coup. He didn't want the troops to protect the Capitol. What he was saying is that he wanted troops to help him in a procession to the Capitol building. Here it is, page 534, chapter 6 of the January 6th report. It says, Donald Trump's advisors tried to talk him out of it. White House senior advisor Max Miller shot it down immediately. Because concerns about Trump's safety. Pearson agreed, but Trump was persistent and he floated the idea, this is the procession to the Capitol. Trump floated the idea of having 10,000 National Guardsmen deployed to protect him and his supporters from any supposed threats by left-wing counter-protesters. Miller again rejected Trump's idea, saying that the National Guard was not necessary for the event. Miller testified that there was no further conversation on the matter. After the meeting, Miller texted Pearson, "Just glad we killed the National Guard and a procession." That is, Trump briefly considered having the National Guard oversee his procession to the U.S. Capitol during the coup. Trump did not order the National Guard to protect the U.S. Capitol or secure any of the buildings and to secure the lawmakers. So that's from the report. That's why it's important that we go through the actual sources. And by the way, here's Donald Trump's message about Mark Milley. He says that Milley engaged in treason with China. And then he goes, "This is an act so egregious that in times gone by, the punishment would have been death." Donald Trump says, and don't gaslight me that, oh, Donald Trump didn't threaten Mark Milley with death. Okay, he says it in his post. And just so you see, this is MAGA Republican Paul Gosar further spreading this conspiracy that is in Trump's post as well, that, you know, he's dealing with China and giving them the heads up about me on his own. Watch Paul Gosar, MAGA Republican, play the clip.
Committee room. Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, issued, quote, a stand down of the entire military in 2021 because he falsely believed the military is systematically racist. What an insult to our brave men and women. General Milley, instead of fulfilling his constitutional duty to serve Donald Trump, the duly elected president at the time, representing the voice of the American people, conspired with both Nancy Pelosi and foreign adversary, the CCP, on separate occasions to hatch plans to overthrow the sitting president of the United States. What insurrection, you say? The point of all these actions is clear. Cleanse the military of conservatives.
That's why, folks, this is a network about facts. This is a network about evidence. I'll show you what Trump said. I'll show you what Gosar said. I'll show you what Trump's former Secretary of Defense said. I'll show you what Donald Trump's former acting Secretary of Defense said. Just use their words. Here's what they're saying. I don't have to spin that. I'm just going to play their words. Thank you for watching. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 2 million subscribers thanks to your support. Check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Have a great day.
Hey Midas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.